Let's dive into why I think Riverside.fm is worth learning before you go into things like a Descript and more complicated softwares like a Premiere Pro. I'm going to cover what it is like for you to record, edit, and promote your show with Riverside.fm alone. So make sure to stick around till the very end, and I think you will find this useful. So once you set up your account and you log in, you're going to see these three different tabs on the side. Let's start with the scheduling feature that Riverside offers. If you hover over to the schedule tab and you create new session, this area gives you an opportunity to invite people directly inside of Riverside. So if you do not want to use Google Calendar or some other software to basically, book those sessions, you can actually, name this like test guest recording with Misbah. And then let's say that I schedule this for Monday, and it is going to be from 3:30 p.m. to, let's say, 4:45 p.m. Eastern time. And then in this field, of course, you can enter the email of your guest or yourself. And then just like you would set up, maybe an agenda for meeting, you can actually do that in the description area here as well. And so we're going to go over back to the home tab, hover over to this top bar here, and let's start with the record. If you are doing a guest episode, this is where you're going to start your recording. When you hit that, don't worry, it doesn't start recording automatically. It gives you a chance to set things up. And then of course, these three areas are pretty important where you can select FaceTime, which is showing basically my internal webcam right now, or I use a software called Camo, where if I basically selected that, I can connect my iPhone 15 as a webcam. Now the microphone section, make sure that you have selected the interface. So for me, I am using, the Scarlett as my audio interface, and that is technically what my mic is, but you want to make sure that the right source is selected, because once you hit record, you can't change those things. You'd have to stop the recording and adjust that. And then of course, your speakers. So if you are wearing headphones and you want the output to be, there, you can do that. If you're not wearing headphones, having it be on your MacBook or internal speakers is just fine. When you hit Join Studio, what you are seeing on the screen here, starting with the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have the recording information. So if you expand this, you can see all of the details here. So, live quality means when I'm recording, it's showing up in 720p, but the max quality I have enabled is 4K. So if I did have an input that allowed that to happen, then it's going to record up to that. Now let's take a look at the center of the screen. So you've got these two panels here. When your guest enters the room, you can have them be in a waiting room similar to Zoom. If you are recording solo episodes, Riverside is still a wonderful place to do that, especially if you aren't recording on an external camera, kind of like I am here, where, you have 2-3 separate outputs after that, and you want everything to maybe be just in one place. And so the way you would do that if you're recording solo is just X out that guest panel, and notice how now I can see the full screen and, the frame of what will be showing with me as the main speaker. Now, the next thing I want to hit here is this settings icon. When you hit the settings icon, this is where you can get a preview of, are we doing an audio only episode? Are we doing audio and video? I recommend always doing audio and video, even if you have no intention of actually publishing the video, because of course you can do clips later, and it's just nice to make eye contact with the guest. It makes for better connection and a better episode overall, especially if you are recording remotely. Before you hit record, it's a great idea to double check and hover over these three settings: mic, camera, and your speaker, and make sure that they are the same as they were when you first logged in, and make sure it is for your guest as well before you start hitting record. Now, quick reminder that once you and your guest are done recording, you'll hit the leave button and hit end session for all. But when you do that, you'll want to make sure that you leave the tab open. Both you and your guests do that, because Riverside records to the device locally and then it uploads to the cloud. So it is doing that while you are recording, but most of the time there is a little bit of wrapping up that it needs to do once you've ended the session. So make sure that that is complete, because you or your editor will not be able to work on post-production until these tracks are completed. Now that we're done recording, I'm very excited to show you what the editing process can begin to look like in your post-production workflow. So you're going to begin by coming over to the Projects tab and then opening up whichever episode you want to work on. At this stage, if you are working with an editor, one of the things that you'll do is hit the share icon in the top right and hit copy link. This is just like copying the link to a folder in Google Drive or Dropbox, and it gives your editor or any collaborator you're working with all of the assets. So everything that you see on this page is going to be what the receiver of that link is going to see as well. What I'm going to do now is begin the editing process, right? So let's go ahead and hit generate on the full episode. And I'm also going to hit generate on the magic clips. When you do that, you're going to see some parameters and preferences come up. Do you want them to be 30 to 60 seconds, under 30 seconds, longer than a minute and a half? I like to leave this on auto just to see what it picks up initially. You can always trim things down if you need to further, but I like seeing, what else it includes. Focus on speaker. This is a nice option, right? So if we wanted to focus on clips of my guest here versus just clips of me, this is very useful, but let's just leave it on auto so that it can maybe pull some of the best of both of us here. And then of course, if you want to guide it by looking for certain keywords, you would go ahead and enter some of those keywords in here. And this is nice because if you remembered a moment, right, you don't remember the full question, you don't remember exactly the answer, but you remember a keyword around something you wanted to make a clip out of, it's good to include that here. But I am going to leave it blank just so you can see what it generates. Okay, once everything's finished generating, if you just hit show all in the edits, what this does is it pulls up everything, right? So now let's scroll all the way down to the bottom. This is the full episode that was generated automatically without me hitting any buttons, without me doing anything right after it was recorded. And then you've got these magic clips that it seems to have generated. But of course, I'm going to start with the episode that I want to edit. So this right here is going to be the AI generated full episode button that I hit. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit edit there. And now this is the editing interface. This is what you are going to get used to seeing if you're going to be using Riverside to make a lot of your edits. So let's start with this button right here. If you press this, this is where you can change the aspect ratio. So 16:9 right now, as you can see, it tells you it's the landscape wide version for YouTube and Spotify. If you are going to be making clips, of course, we would hover down over to 9:16. But in this case, because we are working on the full episode, I'm just going to kind of look for certain things that, I can trim. But let's just say that I've already done that, right? Now, notice how when I hit a word, it gives me the option to add, correct, and do some of these things. So correct is what you would use if you were just trying to correct the spelling. So for example, my name is always spelled wrong. So I would go ahead, highlight this, and I would correct it to the proper spelling. And what this does is if I'm going to be using this segment for clips, that transcript is going to reflect in the captions that are shown. So that's where you would use that. As you are reviewing your full episode, you might stumble upon a special moment that maybe wasn't caught on a magic clip. And you're like, you know what? I want to make sure to turn this into a clip. So what you would do is highlight that section. And then this button over here next to the trash can that has the plus icon, create new edit. Okay, if I basically hit that, as you can see, it just added that to one of my clips. And then if you tap this button, this basically is going to minimize the tracks or expand them. And of course, if you're not using the timeline at all and you want to hide it temporarily, it gives you some more real estate on the screen to be able to read some of the text, which can be really nice. Now, what's also kind of cool is if you hit add music, you can see that there's some licensed tracks that are, easily accessible already. And so you can go ahead and kind of layer in certain music or sound effects through this if it works and fits for your episode. So we're going to shift over to this right-hand side bar. And I want to start with the AI producer. This is very useful and is very similar to what Descript's Underlord area looks like. There isn't as much as Descript's typically has, but it has all the main stuff here, right? So if you look at removing pauses, okay, it already did that. Removing filler words. So if I wanted to go ahead and cut 447 ums and uhs, I can go ahead and in one click, it's going to completely remove everything. And then of course down here, you've got some other features that you've got the magic audio to make your sound better. If you need to mute out background noise and things like that. And then layouts and eye contact stuff, right? So you may not be using some of this stuff as often. You might stay in the top 3 area here, but these 3 features are still very useful. And notice how the pauses were actually something that were removed in the AI edit already. So when I hit generate full episode, that was one of the things it detected and decided to do. Let's go ahead now and dive into the layout tab on the right hand side. This is where you're going to choose what the actual format on your screen looks like. For full episodes, I actually prefer using full screen. So whoever the speaker is going to get all of the airtime. There's no distraction of like, what's my face look like while my guest is talking? But let's say that you wanted that, right? You want to keep both people in the frame. Then hey, you've got the grid option, which can be everybody has 50-50 real estate there. This feature that I'm showing you is even more useful when you are looking at a clip. So for example, if I just switch this to 9:16, being able to look at a vertical aspect ratio clip and go, oh, awesome. Do I want to have the grid option for this? It might actually look good. Or maybe I do want to keep full screen, or maybe I want to lean into smart layouts for this in particular, because we do want some things switching up and being able to pattern interrupt throughout. And this is a simple way of doing that without adding any extra B-roll or animations. Now, let's come down to the captions area. So when you are captioning your videos, if you like one of these, you can begin there and then you can customize some of it from there. So for example, if I was to hit this one, as you can see, I can kind of enlarge things. I can move it around. I now have a bunch of options for the style here, for the font, for the size. Now let's come down over into the upload section. This is where all of your outros, all of your images, all your B-roll, any of that stuff that you're working with is going to be showing up. Now, if I ended up hitting record here, it's going to take me back to the studio, which I don't want to do. So we're going to skip over that. Let's come over to images. Images is very similar to the music tab where you've got all these licensed tracks that you can use and incorporate without going into a Canva or Envato. And the same thing applies for video. So if you hit the videos tab here, what this is going to do is give you royalty-free videos. Now let's hover down to the text tab. This is where you can actually add some lower thirds text and you can customize it. So if you had chosen some of the styles that you want in your brand kit, this is what is going to show up. And then it has some presets that you can begin with, which can be useful for adding certain things like subscribe and like and check the links in the description and things like that. Now let's say that I'm happy with my edit and I'm ready to export. I'm going to hover over to the top right section here. But before I show you that, I want to show you this share icon. So if your editor finished up everything and they wanted to send you a preview link, they could copy this and you could kind of take a look without the full file being rendered and exported, right? And then once you're happy with all of this, go ahead and hit export and then you're good to go. It's going to basically take a second to do that, but then we can hit keep editing and then move on to editing some other clip. Now let's come over to the edit section. We're going to hit show all, and this full episode that we're seeing the copy of, that is going to be the edited version that is ready to go. So up top here is where you can customize the name of the file. So it's easily, referenceable when you need it. But then let's go ahead back to the export tab and we're going to repeat this process for the audio just like we did with video. So in the audio tab, if I want to keep it consistent with what I did in the video, I would toggle on this normalize audio levels thing and then go ahead and hit export. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is when you come down to the edit section, once you hit export, you have to wait a couple minutes until it is done exporting. It will give you kind of a notification that it's done. And in this case, for the audio, as you can see, when I hover over the screen, it is now showing the download option. If I hover over onto the video version, notice how that download option is not there yet. So that will show up once it is basically ready to roll. So my audio version is done. I'm going to hit download here and then go ahead and just, rename it or save it. And now it is on your computer, and that is the file that you upload to your host. Similarly, you're going to do that same thing with the video version that you just edited. All right, awesome. As you can see, it just gave me the notification that my video version is done. So it did take a couple minutes, but let me now hover over the video just to show you. Wonderful. So this is what the preview link looks like, by the way, if you shared this with somebody. If you are publishing and hosting on Spotify directly, you could technically publish from here. But if you're not and you don't want to kind of deal with the hassle of that connection, I would just make sure you get the actual file onto your computer and then go ahead and upload it to the host separately. So I hope this was useful and opened up your mind a bit to what is possible and made you feel ultimately more capable in owning your means of production and being able to sustain this podcast. I think Riverside will be a big help in your process. Make sure to check out the links in the description below. I offer a free podcast strategy call if you need some more one-on-one support. But thanks again for hanging out, and I will see you on the next one.